Hello, class, and welcome back. I hope you had a good break. We are going to finish the rest of the exam. We're working on question 11 through 20. So this question is a drag and drop. It's one of the new style of questions that you will have on your star. This one was a little bit tricky, to be honest, but let's get to it. Natural selection is a mechanism by which evolution occurs. When species evolve, they change over time. The following image attempts to capture the process of natural selection in one stage. So again, species evolve over time. We know that natural selection is part of evolution and we change, but remember, this happens in a population, which is a group of organisms of the same species. That is what's going to help us a lot. So here, this one, which one is a step and which one is not a step. So the offspring of organisms best adapted to inherit their parents' adaptations also survive better and leave more offspring. Yeah. So what happens is the children, right, the offspring that are better adapted inherit, that was a big word there, inherit adaptation. So this does happen. Organisms which are born with traits that are either beneficial for their environment or not. That does not cause natural selection. Remember, natural selection is that you have this adaptation. And again, that word organism, like it's talking about one singular thing. Organisms adapt by changing genes to survive in the ever-changing environment. So again, the keyword there is just organisms, like one organism or this organism. We're talking about a bigger population. Those who were best adapted to their environment survive better and have more offspring. Yes, this is describing fitness. Organisms developed adaptations during their lives to better survive within their environment. So again, adaptations happen, but they get passed down to the offspring. Organisms with the most useful adaptations usually have the most offspring. Yes. This one was tricky. You won't see anything like that on STAR. It's going to be very direct, but as long as we know natural selection happens in a population, which is a group of organisms that change over time, what happens is one of them have this advantageous trait. That trait that gives them that opportunity to survive is fitness, right? So the organisms survive and keep passing that trait. So what you're going to see is the genes changing over time because you're passing down this really good trait. Question 12, here's the survival rate. So it tells you what it's showing. The table shows the survival rate of two types of beetles in the same environment over a period of years. We have the green and brown beetle. Green is in the 70s, brown is in the 20s and 30s. Which statement about the beetles in this environment is supported by the data? So which one is true? What do we see happening here? Green beetles are more fit than brown beetles. So green beetles are in the 70s or 80s, and the brown beetles are in the lower 30s. I mean, it makes sense. There's more green beetles, but let's keep reading. The brown beetles undergo greater number of unfavorable mutations than green beetles do. Just by looking at this graph that has numbers, I cannot tell you if they went through mutations or not, to be honest. So I do not have enough information. The green beetles have a greater gene frequency among the population than brown beetles have. Gene frequency is just how many times you see that trait. I don't know what gene frequency they're talking about. Just by looking at these numbers, I cannot tell you about gene frequency, so that's not enough information. The brown beetles had a shorter life cycle than green beetles. By seeing the number 70s and the 30s, I cannot tell you how long they live. I cannot tell you any of that information. So again, sometimes they expect you to know something you just don't know. So B, C, and D, we do not have information. Our best answer was A. And it makes sense. To be fit means you're able to survive and reproduce, right? So we see that here. They're surviving at a greater number and they're reproducing. So your best answer was A. Organisms can be classified based on homology, which is shared characteristics. So here it does tell you what it is. Shared characteristics inherited from a common ancestor. In the past, homologies were based on anatomical structures and patterns of embryonic development. So again, when we're seeing these words, we know that we're talking about common ancestors because whenever you show something that you have in common, it shows common ancestry. In the more recent years, in the use of molecular biology, techniques have allowed homologies to be compared at the level of nucleotide sequence. Remember, I said whenever you see nucleotide sequence, we should think of DNA. That is our biggest piece of evidence tying us to each other. Remember, we have this theory that we all came from one organism. We all evolved from a common ancestor because we all share DNA. Any living thing, trees, animals, ourselves, bacteria, we all have DNA. We all have adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Nucleotide sequence comparisons are possible because all organisms share which of the following: DNA bases, organelles, division of the nuclear chromosome, types of proteins needed for cellular functions. We definitely do all share DNA bases. We all have the 4 original bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Cellular organelles. Not all of us share the same organelles. For example, plants have not chromosomes, I'm sorry, chloroplasts, and we do not. We do not have chloroplasts. The division of nuclear chromosomes. Nuclear should tell you they're talking about the nucleus. Not everything has a nucleus. Remember, prokaryotes, pro equals no. They have no nucleus. The types of proteins needed for cellular functions. We do use proteins, but everyone's protein use is different. So your best answer was A. So yes, now through discoveries, we're able to compare through DNA, and that is the strongest piece of evidence we have for common ancestry. Plants have developed many methods of seed dispersal. The table shows 2 different plants. So here we have the mass and the seed shape. If you look here, the milkweed and the dandelion, they are made to fly. They weigh very little, and the way that their seed shape is so they could get further. How has the seed dispersal method developed these plants? By giving them a reproductive advantage. So how does them being able to blow far away help them reproduce? It ensures offspring will be dispersed and reduces competition for resources. So disperse means to be like spread around. I mean, that's possible. The method reduces the chance that herbivores will consume the seeds. I mean, herbivores, which are plant eaters, are still going to eat the seeds. They're just flying away, but we cannot say that they won't eat them. The method lengthens the life cycle of each of these plants. We can't say that for sure. Just because the seeds can blow away, it doesn't mean that the plant will live longer. The method reduces the plant's need for water and other nutrients. Again, the ability of the seed to fly away does not mean that it's not going to need as much water or nutrients. So your best answer is A. Because they're able to fly away, they're spread over a larger area. So that dispersal reduces the competition for resources because they're all over the place. Here, the fact that both of these mammals, the opossum, which is native to North America, and the kangaroo live in Australia, are marsupials. So the opossum is a taquache, and the kangaroo, well, we know what a kangaroo is. The fact that both of these mammals incubate their immature offspring in a pouch provides evidence that, so these animals are both marsupials and they take care of their babies in a similar manner. This is showing that they have similarities. So they belong to the same species. Just by looking at them, we can see that they're possibly not the same species. Remember, the same species can reproduce. They can produce offspring. So by looking at them, it is very unlikely that they can both have offspring together. Range great distances to eat. By looking at them, I cannot tell you what they eat, so that's not easy to see. They have very similar skeletal structures. Again, if you look at the kangaroo, which is extremely tall and walks upwards, and the opossum, which is longer this way, I cannot tell you if they have similar structures. They descended from a common ancestor. So this one is very possible because I know that they're marsupials, and I know that they take care of their babies the same way. So they are more than likely related. They have a common ancestor somewhere down the line, not closely related, but there's definitely relation there. Okay, class, for this one, here it is showing the fossils of some cetaceans. So these are like older ocean living animals. Here you see legs and tails. The legs got a little bit shorter. The animal actually got smaller. And here we're back to being longer. And you have this bone. But you should notice, like, hey, there is no more legs. Over time, they evolved and had no legs. So cetaceans are whales and their relatives. Yes, that was correct. The diagram shows some fossils of the cetaceans. Which statement provides the best evidence that Abulan, this first one, is an ancestor of the Baleosaurus? So homologous structures occur in each fossil. Similar nitrogen bases are found in the DNA. The fossils were found in different locations. The youngest fossil is larger than the oldest fossil. So based on what we see here, similar nitrogen bases found in each DNA. So based on the diagram, right? I cannot tell you if they share DNA bases because that information is not given. The fossils were found in different locations. It does not tell me where they are found. It just tells me who is oldest and who is youngest. The youngest fossil is larger than the older fossil. Just by looking at size, that is untrue. So homologous structures in each fossil. Do I see homologous structures? Remember, homologous structures means they are similar. Absolutely. Here we have the little arms, we have the ribs, you have this long spinal column, like a tail-looking spinal column. So they definitely have some similarities in their structure. And remember, homologous structures means they are similar. Not the same, they are similar, so it means you have a common ancestor. So they definitely evolved from each other. Not evolved from each other, I'm sorry, they share a common ancestor. The cladogram shows evolution of land plants as indicated by fossil records, which discovery would challenge the validity of this cladogram. So basically is which one would make this false, right? Because it's going to challenge it because it doesn't fit. So which one is false? A large aquatic vascular plant about 2 million years old. So a vascular plant, we're saying 2 million years old. Vascular plants started over here about the 400 region. So we had an aquatic vascular plant somewhere over here. Yeah, I mean, it came after the vascular plant, so this one might happen. The species of algae that has existed for less than... So algae, if you look at that one, guys, I apologize. I didn't know it cut off. So green algae ancestor. Here. Algae, we can look at that one. A moss species that existed for less than 380. So mosses are about right here. If you find a moss less than 380, I mean, that makes sense. You have evolution of seeds, so mosses came before seeds. That would make sense. And a fossil fern that is more than 425 million years old. So 425, that means I would have a fern somewhere over here, but ferns are not until after 409 million. So they're pretty young if you look at it there. That would make all of this wrong because we would say that ferns had all of these traits. When we don't see ferns until all the way over here. If we said they're down here, that would definitely challenge the graph that we see. It would not make sense. It would say that the ferns had all those traits. So that would be our best answer. K-class, which condition is essential for natural selection to result in a new species? So what do we need for natural selection? We've gone over this. You need variation because in the word itself, it says selection. It's going to select the best trait, and you need one that gives you an advantage because you're going to choose the best trait. Unlimited resources, this means that everything that you need is available. Unlimited resources sounds great, but again, there is no competition. You do not know what traits are better because everyone is just getting everything that they need. Inherited variation. So remember, inherited means that your parent can pass down the trait. I mean, we do see a word here. Static environment. We might have not known what static meant, but it means it stays the same. In natural selection, nature is not consistent. It is going to change. So we know that one will not be correct. And a long lifespan. We haven't discussed like how long animals lived affecting natural selection, so that would not be the best answer. Yes, definitely an inherited variation. Remember, in order for natural selection to change the population over time, you needed to pass down those traits to you needed to be able to pass down the traits to the other organisms, so that makes sense. And some organisms have genes that improve their ability to survive and reproduce. These genes also help their offspring survive and reproduce. Which of the following would most likely increase? So we're talking about traits that are helping you survive. The frequency of the genes in one individual, the frequency of the genes in the population, the number of genes in one chromosome, and the number of genes in the species. As we've discussed before, whenever you're dealing with a star question, most of the time you can cross out 2 right away. The number of genes, we are not increasing genes. Genes make up your chromosomes, right? So we are not increasing the number of genes. We're not adding more information to anyone. Remember, if you're increasing that information, you can change the number of chromosomes, and then that would cause a whole mess. So C and D are automatically out. Increasing the frequency. Frequency is how the number of times that you see it. So it just means that it'll come up more often in one individual or population. Here, we know we're talking about what specific process. When the genes improve their offspring, they help them survive and reproduce. We're talking about natural selection, right? So natural selection, does it change one individual or a population? Remember, a population is a group of organisms of the same species. B is definitely your best answer because remember, evolution changes a population over time. That is part of our vocabulary. It changes a population over time. And our last question, thank you for being so patient. The concept of gene flow is demonstrated when a cow is driven off its herd, joins another herd, and reproduces. The cow contributes to the gene pool of the new herd, which is most likely increases. So when you are adding like a new gene, you're adding a new variation to a population, what increases? Natural selection, genetic variation, environmental fitness, or reproductive mutations. Mutations are random, so that is one that we can cancel out. It contributes to the gene pool. Remember, the gene pool is all the traits that make it up. You can't tell about environmental fitness. Fitness is its ability to survive and reproduce. We can't tell you if it was an advantageous trait. Genetic variation or natural selection. These are the ones that would be your last two. Contributes to the gene pool. Does it increase variation when you have gene flow, which is the movement of genes, or natural selection? Is it going to change the population over time? The best answer, you might want to think about natural selection, but the best answer is increasing genetic variation. Variation is variety. You have a lot more options, and you do, because one cow was driven off and joined to the other herd. So again, class, please make sure to write notes on the side. Either Ms. Adame or Ms. Ramos will pick up your packets. And again, thank you for coming to Saturday school and going over this exam. Again, send me a message on Teams, or I will get the list from the teachers on campus and I will adjust your grades. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Bye, guys.